China's visa-free expansion. How much of an impact will it have for tourism and the Chinese economy? Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Caleb sitting in for Anand Naidu, and you're watching The Heat. Travelers from around the world are now finding it a lot easier to visit China. The country has expanded its visa-free entry policies, and visitors from many countries can now stay for up to 30 days. And that is driving a major increase in tourism. It is also a big boost for China's economy. Among the countries benefiting from China's visa-free access are 5 from Latin America: Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, and Uruguay. I talked about that earlier with Bruna Santos. She is director of the Brazil Institute. Bruna, China really has opened the door for Latin America with this visa-free policy for Brazil and other nations there. It's going to make it easier for people to make that very long trip, and it has the potential to really open up business ties more. Do you think a lot of people are going to take advantage of this, and how important do you see this for Brazil and other parts of Latin America?
Thank you. Absolutely. I think it's important to understand that China's influence in Latin America isn't being built through soft power speech alone. It's showing up in middle class decisions about cars, about phones, and now travel. So it's an important element of a middle class consumption decision making. This is happening, I think, it isn't dramatic, but it's steady. I think China is becoming more and more a legible, a practical partner in Latin American life. And you are starting to see their everyday presence. There's a new generation that will not see China as a source of cheap manufacturing only. They see the China of BYD, they see the China of TikTok, Xiaomi, fast tech, and futuristic cities. And they will learn more about the country as travel is easier. There's less friction to go there than it used to. Also, I think the relationship between China and Latin America has always been full of distance and stereotypes, and closing ties, making them closer and making them building people-to-people ties is absolutely important in the long term. And that presence isn't just economic. I think it's perceptual. It's right. Shaping how younger generation are understanding modernity and progress.
So the fact that people can make that very long trip and now stay there 30 days and have the time to do things face-to-face, shake hands with people, meet people, sit down, have tea, that's going to be very significant. What sense do you think that this is going to perhaps spark even more trade, even more deals, even more people-to-people ties between these two important nations?
Absolutely. And I remember I moved to China back in 2010, and at the time, the country still felt very distant from Latin America. It was mostly importing commodities, and it was really rare to see Latin American business delegations traveling to Beijing. And if you look at the picture, for example, that Lula took in 2023 in his first visit to China with a major delegation of business leaders that went there from different sectors, I think it's an important sign of a maturing relationship. And with more face time in China, I think people will learn more about it, and it will enable more of not only culture exchange, but obviously business exchanges.
If you think about what's going on in Latin America now, China's been very active. If you think about Peru, the port in Shanghai, that's going to open up really that whole continent, if you will, to send more goods very quickly to China as well. And of course, Brazil being a part of BRICS. They already have a close relationship with China. China is very important to them. And look at the United States. Basically, the U.S. for decades has considered Latin America in its backyard. But now U.S. President Trump has what many can call an antagonistic relationship with President Lula da Silva. So what is this going to mean to China and Brazil? Do you think it's going to bring closer ties, the fact that these two nations are getting along, the fact there are so many trade opportunities, and now people can go over visa-free and spend much more time in China?
Yeah, exactly. All of this, I think, is unfolding at the same time that the US is returning to a more aggressive unilateral trade posture under Trump, which creates, I believe, a geopolitical opening, one that China seems to be ready to seize, not just through trade and infrastructure, as you said, but through tourism and technology. And perhaps I think the data is already capturing that. If you look at the data, how the perception towards China have changed in the region, it's really massive, I'd say. 10 years ago, only 15% of Mexicans, for example, would see China favorably. And today that number jumped 10 years after to 56%. The same with Brazil. So all over the region, I think China and Brazil, China and the region are being brought closer together because there is a void.
And talk about Latin America, the United States, and China, that trifecta, if you will, because the United States become very well known in the past decade for building walls, well, China seems to be building bridges, opening up, and especially with this visa-free policy, now so many people have the chance to visit China very easily. How do you think people in Latin America are looking at this? Is it a great opportunity?
It's an opportunity to diversify partnerships. I think in leadership, one important part is showing up, and the Chinese have shown up for a number of different investments in South America over the past 20 years, something that we didn't see happening with US companies. And I think obviously there is strains in the relationship between Brazil and other countries in South America with the United States right now. But more than an opportunity, not to China, it's an opportunity to other regions in the world to engage and to diversify cooperation.
And Bruna, one final question. You have lived in Beijing. It's a wonderful historic city that has changed dramatically in the past decade plus. Talk about that and what it's going to mean for people to go over, visit Shanghai, Shenzhen, Beijing, and all the other cities, mega cities in China, smaller communities as well, and experience this people-to-people exchange. So often we hear China talk about a win-win opportunity, but this certainly seems to fit that to a T.
Yeah, I think that one of the things people will see and perceive is how progress manifests in Asia differently than it did in the Western world. So experiencing a big city in China, not only Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and others, it's, I think, an experience that travelers from all over the world will not have in the Western capital. And that's something that perhaps will inspire people. And another thing is, I think, how those cities are being built on top of green technologies. I think that's also, again, a long shot, a long game being played, especially with younger generations, as they can show the world that you can build things, you can build faster, and you can build green solutions in urban development. There are a number of caveats to it. I think there are a number of nuances, but it will, I think, by China opening up for tourism, I think it opens also doors for people to be inspired by their model of development.
Wonderfully said. Bruna Santos, I can't thank you enough for your time.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Okay, now for a broader discussion on all of this, joining me from Beijing is Liang. She is a chair professor in economics at Willamette University in Oregon. Also with us from Germany is Andy Mock. He is a senior research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. And also in on this discussion, Sourabh Gupta. He is a senior Asia Pacific policy specialist at the Institute for China American Studies. I want to welcome all of you to our program. Thanks very much. Andy, I want to begin with you. Why is China doing this right now? Visa-free entry has really expanded. Now people from dozens of countries can go there, spend up to 30 days. What does it mean? And why now? Why the aggressive push now?
Well, Sean, I think a lot of attention has been paid to this from a tourism economic development perspective. And that's not wrong, but I think it's incomplete and missing perhaps a much deeper reason. And there's a couple, I think, very important reasons to emphasize here. I think, first of all, what China is signaling to the world is confidence. Confidence that China is stable enough to welcome people from all around the world. It can handle the risks, and saying, please come and see for yourself. And this is in stark contrast to countries like the United States, which, when it's feeling anxious and insecure, tightens borders, whether that's because of terrorism, economic insecurity, political populism. So I think that's one very, very important reason. Soft power, I think, is another, in that, I think what China has seen over the years is that it's important to talk the talk, tell people what it's doing, why it's doing it. But there's no substitute for direct experience. And I think this is a very, very potent form of soft power and diplomacy as well. And what we're seeing around the world is that political leaders, especially some around the world that have been very negative about China, increasingly now have to confront their own people who are asking, look at how modern China is. Look at how safe the streets are. Look at how clean it is. Why can't we have these things? And I think this is a very, very powerful but less obvious reason, I think, why China is doing this. Again, show, don't tell. But I think we have to tell, of course. But showing is also vitally important.
Indeed. I think you make some great points here. Liang, I would like to turn to you because you're in Beijing right now. Get to see it up close and personal, as it were. Now, China's talked a great deal about opening up over the past number of years, and it has. But really, in the last couple of years, really taken off with this visa-free. I think Andy really hits the nail on the head when China says, look, come here and see, because you spend most of your life in the United States. People have big misconceptions about China.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Good to be with you, Sean, and panelists. I think you're right. Andy made a good point. I think this is really a display of the confidence and as well as the soft power. And I think there are also very tremendous, economic implications as well. If you remember, this visa-free, policy pretty much started by the end of 2023. So this is a time when the country is trying to reopen after the pandemic, and I think the effect has been really very obvious. Have been very evidently positive. Last year, 132 foreign tourists visits have happened in China, and that shows a very large increase, as well as tourism spending has reached $94 billion, and so that is a 97% recovery of the tourism visits and 93% recovery of the tourism spending. So I think the momentum continues to build up. With the latest Azerbaijan was added in that visa-free list, and so we're likely to see more this kinds of opening up policy. And I want to just add one more, which is this is not a temporary sort of makeshift to boost the economy. I think this really reflects China's long-term structural change and also its high-level opening trajectory. This is part of the holistic policies, including others like opening up, Hainan Island as a, free trade zone, and also many other policies to reduce barriers for foreign investors, and also, improve the departure tax refund policies and so on and so forth. All these are trying to make it convenient and attractive for foreigners to come to China to work, to play, and to invest, and so on and so forth. So I really think that this reflects China's, high-level opening as a policy objective.
And Sourabh, again, thanks for being with us. This visa expansion, it also includes reciprocal agreements with many nations, Malaysia being one, where people from China can go to Malaysia and vice versa, visa-free. Our reporter, Ryan Meltzer, had the chance to kind of explore this just a bit from the Malaysian standpoint. I want you to listen to what he has to say in this story.
It allows people to visit the two countries for tourism or business for up to 30 days at a time, and a total of 90 days every 6 months. Malaysia says the policy will be enforced for the next 5 years, with an option to extend for a further 5. Chinese national Keith Lee runs an agency specializing in travel between China and Malaysia.
This announcement is both timely and highly welcome. It's really a positive step, that fosters that stronger ties between the two nations.
Visitor arrivals from China to Malaysia are up by more than a third so far this year, eclipsing pre-pandemic numbers. Individual travelers and families have particularly benefited from the visa waivers.
Before, getting a visa required planning months ahead. It was a hassle. Now we can just pack our bags and go whenever we want.
This is our first overseas trip. We were nervous about the visas and language barriers, but everything has been smooth.
It's not a one-way street, with Malaysian visitors to China also hitting record numbers. And with the visa waiver policy now cemented, more Chinese and Malaysians than ever before will find it easy to discover and explore each other's countries. Ryan Meltzer, CGTN, Kuala Lumpur.
And so really from a regional standpoint, this is going to be very significant, not just from tourism, but from business as well. We know China has really shored up a lot of trade deals and relationships that it has had going on, very strong relationships in that area. What is it going to mean to the economy as a whole, focusing on that region?
I think, first of all, these are very, very thoughtful ideas, and the way that the two countries are going about it. Besides, I agree with everything that Liang and Andy said. I think they are exceptionally important and good points that the Western media has framed China in a way. The Western media has power. It's earned its power, but it says who and what China is. But what China is saying and what Malaysia is also saying is, why don't you just come to our country and check us out and make your own judgments on that basis? And so I think from that standpoint, it is very, very important. Both these countries also want to build out their service economies. I think it's very important for China as it's making that transition. And of course, there's a lot of domestic tourism, internal tourism, but when you cater to a foreign audience and to a very diverse foreign audience, you need to up your game. And I think it's going to become very important in terms of China building out its own tourism capabilities. Malaysia has already done that to an extent simply because it has been a tourist destination for a while. But I think the cherry on top is this idea of being able to also conduct business. I think that is the most important. It takes it one step forward, and it ties the destinies of the two countries that much more inextricably. Not just people-to-people ties, but people-to-people ties doing actual business. And I think, and I hope, not just that this will be a stepping stone for expansion to other neighbors in the ASEAN region, but that also that both countries will start thinking in terms of something like, the US has its H-1B policy, and it has those sort of means how you can stay on longer, you can study longer, you can start working, and how this might be the beginnings of hopefully a basis to get high quality talent or even just talent out there from both countries reciprocally, staying longer, starting businesses, and maybe down the line, even starting families. Yeah. I think it's a great idea.
Andy, I want to pick up on that because I've talked to a lot of my friends who live outside the United States, different countries. And to be honest, a lot of them right now are simply scared to come to the United States. They've seen the images of ICE cracking down virtually in all parts of the United States, and they don't want to walk around and have to carry their passport or whatever they need to show, look, I'm here as a tourist, I'm going to be leaving, and it makes for a very uncomfortable situation. Compare and contrast that with what's going on in China right now, which is very welcoming.
No, you're absolutely right, Sean. And I think, the contrast couldn't be more stark in that, the U.S. was once seen as a beacon of openness. And certainly in the last few years, that's changed dramatically, as we've read in the news reports. And now I think, I don't know if it's been implemented yet, but certainly it's been reported that there are plans for a fairly expensive, I think it's $250 for like a visa validation fee as well. So I think it's the U.S. is making it increasingly difficult for visitors to come, and that certainly hurts the economy. I think it also really hurts the U.S.'s relations with people around the world as well. And China's doing the exact opposite. One thing I do want to point out too, Sean, is we talked about the reciprocity of this program. And I think we all know that in diplomacy, reciprocity is one of the foundational principles. But China also is offering visa-free visits to countries who have not reciprocated. And I think this is very, very important to point out as well, that this actually is not done from as a sign of weakness, but I think actually a sign of strength to say again, from countries like France, Germany, Australia, come, take a look. And I think this is, again, an incredibly smart, incredibly grounded approach that is going to pay long-term dividend. We already are seeing this, as we've heard from countries in the global south, or we can call them the non-aligned countries. But even in the U.S., I think we are seeing many Americans think very favorably of China, not because they believe in the ideology, but because like TikTok enable them to earn a living. And we've seen many Americans rise up when TikTok was threatened with being banned, not because they support the Chinese government, but because it's in their interests to do so. And I think this people-to-people diplomacy aspect, especially towards the Western or the Anglophone, or I would say maybe the Western developed countries, is going to pay long-term dividends.
Yeah, and Yang, I want to talk a bit about what you're seeing over there right now. Are you seeing a lot of international tourists? Because I was over there in the month of March, and I didn't see a ton, and I did travel a decent amount. But one thing, when I do come back and I tell people what China's like with its EVs, with its high tech, with its high-speed rail, with the easy travel, with cashless society, I don't think people can really get their head around how much China has changed in a short amount of time.
Yes, I think you're right. I think really, as Andy and you both emphasized, I think seeing is believing. I think when you come to China, when you're able to take advantage of the vast infrastructure, the very convenient transportation assets, the mobile payments, which is again very convenient. Even foreigners, they can download certain apps and they're able to spend freely. But there are also, as I mentioned earlier, the departure refund, tax refund policies, and so on and so forth. It just makes it so much easier for the foreigners to come here to navigate through, to be able to enjoy themselves. And as to the foreigners, yes, I do see a lot of them in various attractions, Great Wall, Forbidden City. Despite scorchingly hot weather, people are really enjoying themselves. I think instead of saying that China's economy is collapsing, I think come to China and see the vibrant service industries, the restaurants that are always full. And in fact, I think in the tourist attraction, you just wish they're not as many people. So I think it's a very vibrant places, full of, historical traditions, very interesting cultures. I do think that it's very important for people to come here and really witness the country themselves to understand, its economic performance, its friendly people, and its great culture. And I think the other thing is, China is making progress along the way. I think, this year when I came back compared to 2 years ago, many things have already improved. Such as the mobile payments. I think now it's actually much easier. And also when you wanted to buy tickets or reserve, tourist reservations on the phone apps, everything now has become much more easier over time. So I think, it's visible that China is making all these, progress. I think, again, as a way not to just boost its economy, but I think really to become a bridge to connect to the rest of the world, to introduce these people-to-people changes, which I think greatly enhance understanding, between the two cultures. And I think that would really go a long way to foster, constructive, cooperative, and healthy relationships between the two.
Yang Liang, I wasn't going to ask you about the heat there. I'm glad that you brought it up. Sourabh, I want to ask you, we've talked about other nations and the agreements that they have. One country that our panel talked about just a bit ago, Azerbaijan, and people there are very excited. I want to play a couple of sound bites from people who are now excited that they can make the visa-free trip to China.
Since childhood, we have heard a lot about Chinese history and its landmarks. It's nice that we have visa-free access now. That's good since we can stay for 30 days and explore China by ourselves.
Oh, how nice news it is. So I had such plan actually to go there before, but because of visa issues, I couldn't go. And now I can make it real very easily. So I'm very happy for that.
You know, sir, what strikes me is the excitement is genuine coming from these people. They're going to get to see a very historic culture, but one that is also incredibly modern.
Yeah, you know, China is rising and rising really fast, and what China was 25 years ago is a very different China today. And people have read about Chinese dynamism in whatever context, whether through Western media or through different their own national media, and they want to have a look at it. They've seen the pictures of Beijing, of Shanghai, of the historic sites out there. And I think this is an opportunity for them. This is an easy way to get across. You know, living in a developed country, one really doesn't understand how trying the issue of just getting a visa is, and the kind of stress one has to go through to just get a visa, to schedule the appointment, to get those forms filled. It's not easy. That's an easy tipping point to kind of, no, I'm not going to go out there. And that's not really well understood in the West, because they have their mutual visa-free policies, and you can easily go from Europe to America and stay for 90 days, et cetera, and that's why it's not well understood. But now the easing of visa restrictions makes travel so much easier. I just wanted to bring up one more other point out here, and I know we're focusing on the Malaysias, on the Azerbaijans, etc., but I think this is also great for Chinese themselves. You know, China is it's a great ancient civilization, but it's a young nation. It has been, like India, a poor nation. And that creates a certain degree initially of, we have this great civilization, but there's also a certain complex because we are poor. And the tendency thereafter, thereby, has been, there is a certain arrogance, especially with kind of third countries. That arrogance is not present with Western countries, because the West has been seen to have been successful. But in a lot of other countries, smaller countries, this is an occasion to go, get out, see those countries, and really appreciate it there.
I appreciate what you're saying, but we are running out of time. I hate to cut you off. It's an electric topic, and I wish everybody could go over and see and make their own minds up for what it's like over there. But I want to thank our panel for their time and their insight. We're going to leave it there. I want to thank everyone for watching another edition of The Heat.